Hey guys, Dean here. Today we're going to be walking through some of the top places that you can go to visit when you go to Salzburg, Austria. Now, in the same fashion as my last video, which was the best places you can visit in Innsbruck, which you can click on the link in the description below to take a look at, I'm going to be running through some of the best tourist locations that you can visit and enjoy when you go on holiday in Salzburg, Austria. There's some really great museums here, some really great walks, and there's a lot of rich history and culture that you can absorb and learn about as you go around the city. Now, it's quite a small city in comparison to some of the other cities like the capital of Vienna, but there's so much to do in Salzburg and so much to learn about and explore that I thought I'd compile a video of my favorite places when I went on holiday there. So the video will be time-stamped, so you should be able to skip ahead and jump to your favorite or best parts of the video, and I'm going to be telling you about some really cool museums, some landmarks, some really good walks that you can go on, and some of the best tourist places like castles, museums, and famous places that you can visit like palaces. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Number 23, Residenzplatz. Residence Square is part of the old city and houses the Residence Fountain, which is one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful fountains in the city, comprising of 4 engaged horses on its base. This area is home for sports and music events and concerts, or the St. Rupert's Fair in the September months, followed by the Christmas markets later in the year, being another highlight of the Sound of Music film. Number 22, Domquartier. The Domquartier in Salzburg is an absolutely huge region that's one of the biggest highlights of the city, as it houses so many of the country's heritage sites and historical buildings, especially museums and the cathedral. The entrance ticket in this location is perhaps one of the best deals, as it will grant you access to 4 different museums in the city. There's a lot to see in this district alone, and you could easily spend a whole day here. There are the staterooms of the residence, originally housing the Archbishop and his influence, the Residenzgalerie, which I'll cover a little more later, the terrace above the cathedral arches, where you have a beautiful view of the city streets below, the North Oratory and its exhibitions, the cathedral's organ loft and museum where you can see its treasures, the Chamber of Art and Wonders with nature and art pieces, the Long Gallery housing paintings of the Prince Archbishops, and also St. Peter's Museum with treasures from St. Peter's Archabbey, which I will also touch a little more later too. This is really great value if you want to learn about the history and culture of the city and the country as a whole. Ticket prices here cost €13 for adults, and children go free. Number 21, Mozartplatz. Mozart Square is the centerpiece of the historical district of Salzburg, and the most important reason to visit this part of the city is the huge cast bronze statue of Mozart in the middle of the square. Designed by Ludwig Schwanthaler and cast in bronze in 1842 and showcased during a ceremony of the same year in the presence of Mozart's son, this is an important part of the city. Many of the buildings in the square have rich history in connection to Mozart himself or his family, and it's a popular destination that you'll go upon on city tours, and it's also worth visiting on your own. Number 20, Sigmundstor. Also referred to as the Natur, this place is basically an 18th century tunnel which connects the old city area to the Residenzplatz quarter, and it's known as the oldest road tunnel in all of the country. With a similar structure to many famous triumphal arches, this is a nice little connecting piece to see at the edge of the city. Number 19, Sebastian's Kirche. St. Sebastian's Church is a late Baroque period building built upon the historic district of Salzburg with its famous cemetery behind it. Archbishop Leonhard von Cusack had the church constructed between 1505 and 1512, being later demolished during the 18th century and rebuilt in a hall style with Baroque period architecture. The cemetery here was the home of many famous people and their families as a resting place, such as Mozart's father and his wife and more of his extended family. Number 18, Holy Trinity Church. Dreifaltigkeitskirche is the Church of the Holy Trinity in Salzburg, which is one of the most sacred sites within the city, housed in the historic district, and the result of Baroque architecture. With a classical dome and twin tower style of building, this church was built with the idea of Archbishop Johann Ernst von Thun in 1694 to 1702, using Roman architectural designs and models. The interior of this church has a beautiful white and gold adornment to it, with wooden pews and paintings above. Number 17, Residenzgalerie. This is one that I mentioned slightly earlier when I was covering Domquartier. This is the state-owned Residenzgalerie, which is one of the many cultural sites that you can visit within the Domquartier segment of the city. This area is a peaceful classical art exhibit location that houses many old European paintings from the 16th to 19th century, with the 17th century Dutch paintings originally from Count Sursnin's Viennese collection being some of the most favoured by art buffs. There are pieces here by French, Austrian and Italian artists during these periods. Number 16, walking by the Salzach River. As with my previous travel guide on Innsbruck, which you can also check out, I chose to mention the river Salzach in this segment also. It's always peaceful to walk by the river in a city, especially if it divides it into two parts, which seems to be a very common trend amongst the cities in Austria. The Salzach divides the centre of the city and spans for miles, segmenting through Austria and Germany and joining the Danube, which is the second longest river in Europe. You can walk across the series of bridges in the city to see far out and walk around and enjoy scenery. If you want to take it up a level, you could also join the city boat tours on the side of the river, which operate almost daily and give you a tour of the full river along the city side. Number 15, Marionette Museum. Although I will specifically cover the fortress a little bit later, the Marionette Museum is part of Fortress Hohensalzburg and one of the museums contained within, which is a free visit as part of the fortress ticket. This museum focuses around the world of marionettes, and it's situated within the old gun deck segment of the fortress, where you can have a look at doll figurines from the past. There's lots of weird and wonderful puppets in here, and although it may take only 5 or 10 minutes to walk around the complete area, there's scenes recreated from popular old culture, such as characters from Mozart's Magical Flute, as well as the highlight piece, which is based around the Sound of Music opera, which is a common trend throughout Salzburg. Number 14, Mozart Monument. There's actually more than one Mozart monument in Salzburg, with the main of course being in Mozartplatz, although this one sits upon a hill called Kapuzinerberg, which faces the eastern bank of the river Salzach at an elevation of 640 meters. This was a really niche out-of-sight monument that I stumbled upon when searching for places to see on my travel. There's a great walk from the city centre with a crawl through a series of 100 or so steps, followed by a tough trek up the hill. This makes for great exercise and some good pictures at the top, where you can see the memorial piece for Mozart up close. Number 13, Museum of Modern Art. Das Museum de Modern am Mönchsberg. I would be lying if I said I was a modern art connoisseur. In fact, I didn't particularly enjoy the Tate Modern Museum in London, although perhaps it was because I was young at the time. Although I am not too impressed by the majority of modern works today, and I favour the fine detail more of classical art, I have to say I did enjoy the Museum of Modern Art at Mönchsberg in Salzburg. The location was not the typical modern museum, showing only splashes of paint on a canvas or a few coloured squares. There was actually some genuinely impressive modern art pieces, which seems to be a rare occasion in this age. Located at a high point above the old city, the art museum is upon a number of 4 different levels, being reached by lift from below where you can purchase a ticket. In a modern setting, you'll be able to see art pieces spanning from the 20th to the 21st century here, with modern and contemporary art, with works from the Foundation's private collections. There's a decent series of exhibitions here to explore. Tickets here will cost around €12 for an adult, or €9 for a reduced ticket. Number 12, Franciscan Church. Franziskaner Kirche is a complement to Salzburg's skyline with its unmistakable steeple and structures that split into 2 separate segments, the late Gothic chancel and the Roman basilica. The history behind this point of interest spans back to the Romanesque period all the way up to the modern day. The church has a crucial role in the city, with a Marienglocke church bell supporting summer performances upon the cathedral square. There's also the Hand of Refuge to the right of the building's entrance, which granted anyone admission who touched it. Said to be even older than the city's cathedral, it was engulfed in flames like many old churches in the past, although it did see reconstructions throughout the 12th century. Number 11, St. Peter's Abbey. This place is the oldest monastery in the German-speaking area and Salzburger's archdiocese. Founded in the 7th century in 696 by Bishop Rupert of Worms with the purpose of converting the local population of the area. Based upon archaeological findings, it's clear there was once a church previously upon the same grounds. The area itself was known for its writing school and scriptorium during the Middle Age period, and it's an important part of the heart of the city. With impressive Christian architecture, this location is another hotspot for fans of the Sound of Music film, and it's home to the abbey's catacombs below, which are carved out of the Mönchsberg, as well as its famous cemetery. As with all churches in Austria, the interior is very enjoyable. Number 10. Salzburg Old Town. The Salzburg Altstadt is the historic centre of the city, and it's a World Cultural Heritage Site that's comprised of both Baroque and medieval structures. The majority of all of the tourist attractions can be found within this section of the city, which is very similar in other cities in Austria like Innsbruck. Wander down medieval streets neighbouring the Salzach River, where you can see some beautiful buildings and soak in the pure history of the city. Number 9. Salzburg Cathedral. A 17th century Baroque style cathedral of Roman Catholic influence, the Salzburg Cathedral is the main holy structure of Salzburg, dedicated to Saint Rupert, the first bishop of Salzburg, and Saint Vigilius, a churchman and astronomer, and it was founded originally in 774 on the remnants of an old Roman town. It was rebuilt after a fire in 1181 and further rebuilt in the 17th century in Baroque style under the influence of Prince Bishop Wolf Dietrich von Reitenau, which is the result of its current and most recent appearance. Being the most important and sacred of holy buildings in the city, its immense dome and neighbouring towers gives it a real imposing look over the city streets, appearing like no other. There's much to see here within, such as the cathedral crypts below, art installations and ornaments, a chest containing holy relics of the past saints, the baptismal waters, and much more. With grand architecture, my favourite spot in this building was seeing the treasures of the cathedral, where you can see the large organ, various art pieces, and precious metal ornaments and holy pieces kept in a safe storage. Number 8. Getreidegasse. The home to many popular buildings such as Mozart's birthplace, Getreidegasse is one of Salzburg's most bustling streets in the centre and embodies the heart of the city's old town. With international fashion firms, inns, restaurants and food stops like McDonald's, this street is one of the many popular shopping locations in Salzburg, and it's depicted by its beautiful architecture with large doors and old houses with vibrant colours frozen in history. This is the street for shopping for clothes, buying jewellery, and also the spot for some souvenirs. When I travel, I usually make it a tradition to get some kind of badge or keychain from every city, so I stopped off here to get my Salzburg tag for my backpack. Number 7. Mozart's birthplace. I've been to many museums and Salzburg was no different. Mozart's birthplace, or Mozart's Geburtshaus, is the location in which Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born in 1756 in the Hagenauer house at number 9 Getreidegasse, Salzburg. Today, the site serves as grounds for a museum, which is one of the most visited across all of Austria and a favoured pilgrimage spot for music lovers and fans of Mozart. The museum leads through various exhibits showcasing old letters written and received by Mozart during his life, and covers his younger years of adolescence all the way through to his adulthood across his career, covering the various venues in which he performed at. Originally, the Mozarteum Foundation opened the first museum here back in 1880, and since then it's received consistent attention and maintenance. With original pieces preserved through time, such as pianos, lockets of hair, clothing, and general written material, this place is a must visit for musicians and lovers of classical composure. Expect to pay €12 per person here for a ticket for adults, or €3.50 for children. Number 6. Mirabell Palace. Built by Prince Archbishop Wolf Dietrich in 1606, Mirabell Palace is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Salzburg, and anyone who visited may be familiar with it. The exterior of this structure and its gardens and grounds are easy on the eye, and it makes for a good walk around and exploration inside, although many of its rooms are private or sectioned off. It's popular as the location for many weddings nowadays for its backdrop in its marble hall, which is one of the most popular wedding venues in the world, and the palace building is headquarters for some officials. For a Baroque experience, you can trek through the palace gardens, originally seeing a redesign by Archbishop Johann Ernst von Thun in 1690. There's many a grand fountain around this area, with the palace chapel, the hedge theatre, and the dwarf and rose gardens being centerpieces of these grounds. The gardens are also famous as being one of the many locations in Salzburg which was used when filming the Hollywood musical The Sound of Music, which you will hear me mention multiple times throughout this video. video. The great thing about Mirabell Palace is it's one of the closest points of interest in the city, so it's a good first visit spot and it's free in terms of admission. Number 5, Untersberg. Untersberg is the primary mountain appropriate for tourists in the Salzburg land region. You can take the Untersberg Bahn cable car to carry yourself to the peak for some otherworldly views, especially during the harsher winter weather where snow is rich. Taking about 10 minutes from the station to reach the top, the cable car ride has 2 separate gondolas which have a lot of room and gives a great view of the Salzburg city, the German Berchtesgadenerland, and more as far as the eye can see with the great panoramas. This particular cable car ride is really beautiful, and the steep mountains during the snowy season really shows you how high up you are in terms of altitude. The particular day wasn't really the best for me because the super chilling temperature put me a little too close for comfort on the edge of frostbite. I foolishly packed my fingerless gloves and left my normal gloves in the hotel, so I had to keep returning to the station every 5 minutes to warm up my hands. So I didn't really get far or get to explore much of the peak, but what I saw was beautiful enough. For hiking lovers and the feeling of being at a very high altitude near the clouds, this is the spot to be. I took bus number 25 from Salzburg, where Untersberg is the last stop off. Number 4, Fortress Hohensalzburg. Festung Hohensalzburg is a fortress atop Festungsberg above the historical district of Salzburg city. This is the largest of fully preserved castles in Central Europe, and it's a true emblem of Salzburg. Originally built in 1077 as an order by Archbishop Gebhard, the fortress had ongoing development and was the subject to many battles, protecting the archbishops during that era from attacks and hostile uprisings, and ever since its construction it never fell or was even captured by foreign enemies. The fortress is a great attraction, but expect to be taking a tough ascent to get to the top, which can be particularly a drag. When travelling, walking with minimal use of public transport is usually my goal, so I took the walk to the top, actually not knowing that you can use the Festungsbahn funicular to reach the top. Regretting not taking this choice, I did take the tram down to the bottom after leaving, as it's usually included as part of the ticket price for the fortress. The fortress has some rich history, a great little souvenir store where you can buy chocolates, models and more, and there's multiple museums within. The main fortress museum focuses on the history behind the many prince archbishops who were the figureheads in charge of the fortress. Then you can also go into the armory to look at things like cannons, armor sets, weapons, and explore the rest of the fortress to see the different periods in history covered throughout, with some First World War historical pieces in one of the sections also. Ticket prices start at €7.30 for children and €12.80 for adults. Number 3, Salzburg Zoo. Situated on the Hellbrunn ground adjacent to Hellbrunn Palace, the Salzburg Zoo, or Zoo Salzburg, is a really great tourist attraction for family. Since I was a solo traveller, this was another great day out to go to straight after the palace. The Hellbrunn Zoo is a really great and fun place to check out, and it has around 1,500 animals across 150 different species. This place has every kind of animal that you can think of, and it's also ever expanding. They definitely are putting the funds to good use, as when I went last year, the exhibits were receiving some work along with the introduction of a brand new penguin exhibit being completed. The first section of the zoo is an alpine animals area, which has different types of animals that you'd expect to see in the Alps in Austria and nearby Europe, including things like the alpine ibex, mountain lions, the Eurasian brown bear, otters, and other interesting animals too, like the cute little Corsac fox, kangaroos, and one of my personal favourites, the Arctic wolf. You'll see flamingos, pumas, and even snow leopards. There's a large monkey enclosure with different types of monkeys too, like capuchin monkeys and gibbons. There's a huge bird aviary around here with hundreds of different birds like budgies, which you can go up super close with. One of my personal favourite experiences was the African section, which offers a huge savanna orientated area with African plains animals, and if you go underground you'll see the lion house. This was particularly nerve-wracking for me since the zoo was super quiet and nobody was around during this time, and it's a long walk to the African section at the end, so being alone in the underground zoo with the lion behind just a sheet of glass was pretty terrifying when it started to roar. It's safe to say I didn't finish exploring that particular section. It costs €12 for adults and €5.50 for children to enter. Number 2, Hellbrunn Palace. Schloss Hellbrunn is a Baroque palace in the southern side of Salzburg, built in 1613-19 by Marcus Siticus von Hohenheims, Prince Archbishop of Salzburg, a place named for the clear spring that supplied it. The residence itself has no bedroom, as it was only created for a daytime residence, not a nightly location. Hellbrunn is a beautiful ground with an amazing garden, which is a really pleasant and peaceful place to walk around. I had some unused vlog footage which I was playing around with and experimenting with here, which you can see in the background. It was very quiet when I went back in March 2020, and the day was quite wet and dull too. Although it was a really fun experience, sometimes when you get that alone feeling in a large new open place, it can be a fun, great feeling. Not only does the Hellbrunn Palace Gardens have amazing statues, lakes, beautiful flowers, and an interesting place to explore, the main palace has a wide open courtyard, and the palace uses typical Austrian style bright yellows for its exterior. It cost me just a few euros to get a bus here from the city centre. Hellbrunn has amazing views from the mountains in the distance if you go up high on the walking trail, as there's also really great hidden walking areas behind the Hellbrunn Gardens that you can enter as you make the ascent from the palace to the hill leading to the walking paths in the zoo. Number 1, Haus der Natur. The House of Nature in Salzburg is possibly the best museum there is here, and that's why I decided to feature this one at my number 1 spot. Usually when I go around museums, I find everything so interesting, but this particular museum had me so captivated that I spent 4 hours or more walking around all of the exhibits, reading nearly everything. There's everything here from rocks and crystals, to space, myths and folklore, health and the human body, dinosaurs, and a huge aquarium. Definitely my most memorable experience in Salzburg. The aquarium and reptile zoo is really huge in this place, and there's so many tanks with weird and wonderful exotic fish and animals where you can see them up close in their artificially recreated environments, with animals from tropical coral reefs, the Mediterranean, Africa and Asia, and there's even a huge collection of corals. The reptile zoo has lifelike terrariums with different types of lizards like bearded dragons, green mambas, chameleons and so much more. There's really interesting exhibits on the Ice Age and climate, the human body, the animal kingdom, on oceans showcasing megalodon jaws and teeth and big submarines, as well as showcasing Earth throughout the ages and the wildlife of the past in the Salzburg Alpine region. For younger people, there's also the science centre at the end, which was still pretty interesting for me to look around at and see all of the experiments and gadgets in the room, which really makes science more fun. Adult tickets here cost €8.50 and children cost €6. This is probably the best value for any kind of museum which you can get, as there's literally hours of fun and information to absorb when looking around. So thanks for watching my video on the best places in Salzburg. If you enjoyed it, then click the like button and subscribe, and follow me over on Instagram at The Blue Crusader for more updates. I do plan to post more on this channel. This is not my main channel, but I do like to share travel videos and helpful videos and vlogs for people on here, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see more. I will be doing a third video on the top places to visit in Vienna in the coming weeks, so make sure you check that one out. And if you're watching this video in the future, there's chances that that's already been released, so go check that out on the channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.